Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to everyone for attending this meeting on Thursday, the 23rd of November 2023. My name is Councillor Ada Riggett and I am the chair of this panel. Councillor Roy Lees is the vice chair. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Members in the chamber, when you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent? We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Apologies.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 1, declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. If you have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Item 2, minutes of the meeting 27th of July 2023 of the Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of the minutes? No, everybody seems quite content. So are we all content with the recommendation that the minutes of the meeting be approved? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3. I'd like to thank Councillor Bradley, Councillor Wilson for their time tonight. I know they both have many demands on it. It's appreciated that we've got them both as well as the officers who are here to support them. I believe we're going to share the reports, I think is the plan. So we'll kick off with the business plan update 23-24, which is pages 7 to 20 in your pack. Councillor Alistair Bradley, Executive Member for Economic Development and Public Service Reform, and Councillor Peter Wilson, Executive Member for Resources are in attendance, assisted by Polly Patel, Performance and Partnerships Manager. I invite them to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, and I think the report's quite straightforward, but I'll happy to run through it for members' benefit. Obviously, as it details, there's a large number of business cases that have been reviewed as part of this, and the business planning sessions were delivered in February 2023 with staff from across the different services engaging in that process, and they were all approved in June 2023. So this paper is giving an update on where they're up to, given that where we are now in the year. And as you can see on paragraph 9 of a review of those 16 business plans, they contain a total of 81 projects, and then it gives a breakdown of those that are green, that are on target, those that are completed, those that are at amber, i.e. there's some concerns about those projects, and fortunately we've only got one that's actually red, and which is 1%, given that there's 81 projects. And it does a breakdown by the different sectors of the numbers that are green, the numbers that are amber, the one red one, as you can see there, is in the finance portfolio. And it also details some that haven't been started, etc. So there's a table around the ones that are red and amber, so they're obviously coming out for special focus, but most are green, and some have been completed since the last update. So, and it specifies under paragraph 12 which ones they are. The civil penalties policy, obviously the council elections, that's a fairly obvious one. The member inductions, move to cloud hosting, the new CCTV suite at Strawberry Fields, etc., and embedding the new finance team. So they're all the ones that are completed. I think members will be most interested in the ones that fall onto pages 10 and 11, which are the red and amber projects. And the one red project is around the finance system. And I think we've always had problems with this since I became a councillor, going back way back to the shared services around finance systems, because they are very problematic. Getting everything in one place and at the right time always takes longer than it is intended. So the action, the project is the development of the system specification and progression of a tender exercise to move towards contract award and implementation. And as it explains in paragraph 14, it's been put on hold because in terms of getting a stable situation, there's been IT issues regarding interfaces for the different systems, transfer of bank files, etc. And that's taken a significant amount of time. There is no point trying to introduce something into an unstable, instable, whatever you want to call it, environment. So once we have that robust interface, then the project will proceed. So it's quite deliberate, really. There's no point in doing it and doing it badly. So The reasons are there. I'm not an expert on finance IT systems, will beg to tell you, but if the experts are saying this is not the right time to do it, I think we need to listen to that. But it's still to progress once we are in that position, and I understand that we're moving towards that now. There are 16 projects highlighted as amber, and again, I don't particularly want to go through them all in great detail, but obviously there are a number around customer services, and it details what those issues are around those in the paragraphs following on from the actual report. And one of the ICT ones linked to that is the help desk solution stuff around that as well. Public protection, that's a full service review, and that explains why that's not been done at this point in time as well. There's the other ones around particularly audit and risk, and that's business continuity and the business continuity exercises and the suite of reports, etc. And I think it refers to the fact further on around the business continuity and sets the environment for that and why they exactly call out. The communications and visitor economy, a couple of those apply to South Ribble, and obviously of no real interest to members here unless, just for nosiness really. And the 2023 events programme, again, I would argue pertains more to South Ribble than it does to Chorley. I think our 2023 programme is fully robust and what have you. In terms of performance and partnerships, the UK SPF has been slow to get going due to delays in sign-up and what have you, but it is fast catching up. And again, that's something that we have in common with lots of other areas. So that's not just unique to this organisation. It's across the piece because of the relationships. It's a new system, it's a new setup, and it's the relationship with Department for Levelling Up, Deal Look, etc. that's causing that. On the next finance, I see Councillor Riggott looking at me now, special expenses review at Chorley. The review of the considerations of the work undertaken in 2022-23. It explains again where we are on that. There is a commitment to deliver that special expenses, but it is a complex setup, and I think it's just took them longer to get to the bottom of it than they originally intended. And the final item there is the financial standing orders and financial procedures across both councils, reading the approval of both councils, and again, that's a work in progress. I think just going back to the special expenses, it goes back that the project will be reassessed in January 2024 as part of the budget setting process, which to me is the obvious staging post, because any changes would have to be brought in as part of the budget setting in February next year. So we're not a million miles away from that being formulated. Whether it's the outputs and answers that people want is another situation entirely different, because there are a lot of diverse views around special expenses across the council, and it's a problem we inherited a long time ago and has been a problem for a long time. In terms of the appendices, obviously it goes through and details on a scheme by scheme basis where they're up to on individual schemes. Happy to try and answer questions on all those schemes, although I know more about some than others, and I'm sure Councillor Wilson can help on the ones I can't help on. So happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do you want to say anything at this point, Councillor Wilson, or just?
No, I don't. Oh, sorry. I'm flashing green. There we are. I don't think there's anything to add in terms of the overview which Councillor Bradley's provided, but as Councillor Bradley said, if in discussion or questions, wants to tease more out, happy to engage.
Thank you. Open to questions. Any councillor leads to start?
Right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at paragraph 20. Where are we? 21. And it happens that in a lot of the amber cases, we just give what is amber, but it doesn't give any description of how we're going to tackle the amber situation. And when I look at 21, the delivery of the 23 events programme is amber, but surely we're now at the end of 23, and according to this, it relates purely to financing. So how can that be amber? You know, the difference between amber and green on that event.
Sorry, I might have been corrected. It refers to the year starting 2023, so it'll run through to this council year. So it's 2023-24 effectively, from what I understand, right? in terms of, and again, I'll be quite honest with you, the work is in South Ribble that the questions are being asked, if you like, which I think is the overall programme for the two councils together, because we have that as a reported together. I think it'd better if it was actually a bit disaggregated. A lot of these overspends are relating to things in South Ribble that we have no control or direct interest in, from what I understand, like Worden Hall and the there was something else, wasn't there, about as alongside Worden Hall? Which one was it? Oh, the South Ribble Museum. Apologies. The Chorley programme, I think, is fairly fixed within that wider programme, so I don't think we're the contributors to the amber status. Is the best way of putting it. So it's a symptom of working on a shared environment and reporting on a shared environment. And I think the chair has previously flagged up that there's concerns around why that would be done like that. I think it should be disaggregated, to be quite honest with you. And in future, might try and do that.
Thank you, but on the appendix, it does split them up between events programme and Worden Hall as both being amber. So what I'm saying, we're putting this down to an overspend. How can we get through it? Does that mean we're going to have to cut back on expenditure elsewhere?
No, I think the events programme in Chorley, and Peter can maybe help me here, is that there was an overspend there was an increase in budget around the flower show because of the weather at that time, because it rained incessantly, as it always does around the flower show, but we think we used to be now. We're better off doing some kind of Sea World, won't we? It did rain particularly heavily, and to try and mitigate that, there was additional spend put in place, mainly to avoid vehicles tracking the area, because not only will we have the Chorfest event the week before and the flower show the week after, was it that way around? Yeah. Yep. And there was a lot of spend around mitigating the impact of large numbers of people traversing wet ground on the 2 weeks. It did actually work quite well. The ideal was to recoup that money by paring down some of the spends on subsequent events. And I understand that is generally on track to happen. So therefore, I am expecting to see at the end of the financial year that we'll generally come in on budget on Chorley's bit. We're not there yet because we've not gone through the entire year. We've only just done probably our most expensive quarter, haven't we? We've done Chorley Live, we've done the Christmas light switch on, etc. So I think, from my knowledge, we're on the track to make the budget back. But obviously the outlay was all through the first part of the financial year. Is that the best way of putting it? Yeah, does that make sense?
I mean, I'll just make this point, not because it doesn't answer the question substantially, but it just makes the point probably that Roy's coming to, is that there is a slight disparity that when we talk about an events programme, we always talk about 1st of January to the 31st of December. When we talk about quarter performance reporting, we report in April to April. So there is, you're absolutely right what I'm saying, Roy, you're absolutely right. There is a disparity in one sense because we're measuring 2/3 of a year of events rather than a full year of events. So is it rated as amber? You're absolutely right. We probably should review the way we do that, because actually our events programme will come to an end very, very soon for this year, whereas our reporting is we're only doing second quarter effectively. So it's the way we need to tidy that up, how we actually report that back or how we measure it. But we do need to tidy that up.
But I thought the budget was set.
Oh, the budget is, but that's not. But it's coming back to the delivery, is what Roy was saying.
Yeah, my question was basically, if we've overspent now and we've got a budget for the full year, does that mean we're going to have to cut back in other ways, or are we going to end up with an overspend for the year?
You could end up, well, at the moment, that's what's projected, isn't it? Is an overspend. Yeah.
But we still have the ability with the events coming along and I think Chorley Live was very successful to probably recoup more money. We're trying not to make a profit out of Chorley Live, you know what I mean? But it probably didn't cost us as much as it may have done. There are other, events that we can help to balance up.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to ask any questions? Councillor Snape.
Just following on from a similar point, it is, I think this is the first report that I've seen where it has business plans on for South Ribble, and I know you said you'd perhaps look at separating it next time, but I think this is the first one I've seen for this committee where it's kind of confusing things a bit. And we are supposed to be I know it's the same. I just wonder whether or not, might be a question for the chair, whether or not next time the business plan report comes that perhaps it could just be actions for Chorley, because I don't think I've ever seen it before where it's mentioned things in South Ribble.
Thank you, Councillor Steve. I totally agree with you. I understand how we operate well, I probably don't, but I have some understanding of how shared services operate and how we do that. But I think it's really important that we report back to both councils on the matters that relate to them, because it could get confusing for residents. And I could see at some point that members may start to dislike it if that becomes habit, because it is a bone of contention of the difference between the sovereignty of the councils and how business planning and how services are sometimes delivered. So I'd urge all reports to disaggregate if we can in future. But obviously, we've got what we've got tonight. Councillor Steve, who are you?
I was just going to ask another question.
Sure.
It was the under, I don't know what page it is, page 19, agenda item 3. It's under planning and enforcement, produce and publish an environmental crime enforcement policy. I remember I had quite a lot of discussions with Mark Clifford about this and Adele going back like 3 or 4 years, and I got draft copies of it and things because I'd raised some concerns, and I know I raised it the last time the business plans came up, and was told it was kind of one of those things that's kind of got lost in the. I just wondered where's that up to, because it says it's green, so it must now be on track. But what's the time scale for it? Because I think the time scale for it originally was 2021. But obviously we're now November, nearly December 2023, aren't we? Thank you.
I'll be quite honest, I don't know the answer to that. I can find out and let you know. I imagine you don't either. Polly, you know where that one is? It's project 3 on page 19, so it's in the planning and development one, and it's the produce and publish an environmental crime enforcement policy. And it was, from memory, it was going through the throes of being finalised, but I've not seen it come to a cabinet. So it might be that it's actually completed, but it's not. It's either been done on an executive member decision, which would be under Adrian, I think. But it's matters complete, so that's what I imagine has happened. But I must have missed it. Chris, sorry. Would you get back? Yeah, we'll let you know after the meeting if that's okay. But I think it was held up from memory because of some legislative changes. That was why it got delayed, and we wanted to make sure it picked everything up. But I'll let you know. All right.
Thank you. I just wondered, in terms of the RED project, the finance system, whether there's a level of risk we need to consider, either in terms of the integrity of the financial reporting or the accounts, or whether there's a potential additional cost we need to consider if that tender doesn't happen. It's probably my lack of understanding of the rationale for doing it.
Go on, Louise.
Okay.
We'll defer to.
Yeah. So correct in terms of trying to get that stable base, because obviously if we go out to tender, we have so many feeder systems, from payroll to all of our income systems, etc., that feed into the finance system. If we go out, we will then have to get interfaces between those systems to come in. If then we subsequently change some of those systems, or they're not stabilised, we will only end up incurring additional costs. So what we've done is we negotiated a new contract with our existing provider, which is for 1 year with the option to extend for a further 2 years. So we've got that in place, and we've fixed a price for that. And that includes maintenance and any upgrades that need to take place on it. So the integrity of the system is all in place, and cost-wise, those are all contained. It's just that there are better systems that are out there on the market at the moment. It's quite an old system that has been, just kind of been upgraded to a certain level, but there are more powerful systems. But of course, they will cost considerably more than what we've got at this moment in time. So there's nothing with the no reason to be concerned about the integrity of reporting or the costs involved. It's just making sure that we do it at the right time, when we can minimise the implementation costs and have a system then that's set up to go forward, really, with all the feeder systems that are correct as well. If that answers the question.
Timing is everything, Chair.
Sorry, lost my voice for a change. Councillor Singh, Councillor Ainsworth, any questions at this point? Okay, I've got a few, if I may. You'd be disappointed.
We're going to tradition of chairs. One.
I'll pick up a few areas I believe that we haven't looked at. I think just one question on the financial reporting. When are we likely to actually be back on track with that? Please.
So we have actually been doing some preliminary work in the background. We've looked at systems that are out there that are available, that are being used by other councils. We've been to visit other councils to see those systems in operation, and there are different routes. We could kind of purchase our own system and run it ourselves, which is what we've got at the moment, or we could be hosted by another authority who already have a tried and tested system. That's another route to go down. So we're just exploring that at the moment. We've done a lot of work on the tender documentations. We've just not got to the point where we have issued those out to the market. So I would hope that we would be moving towards getting a system to go live by the date that we've got in there, really, which is April 2025. The 1st of April is the best date to go live, because from an audit perspective, if you've been running two systems during the year, you're adding two systems together, or they want to ensure the transactions have been processed correctly in both systems. So we've done a lot of the work. We'd hope to, as I say, get the tenders out and meet the 1st of April 2025, but there is a possibility that would slip. It's very much incumbent on getting all the other feeder systems correct, and we're going to market with the right specification.
Okay, thank you. On paragraph 20, page 12, I'm just trying to go through in order. On empty homes, it's obviously an item that is regularly discussed by members as council a couple of days ago showed. If we're changing how some of the checks are done, is it possible that an update on that could be brought to maybe the neighbourhood area meetings? Like, I think that's where we report the numbers to at that level, because there has been a few questions. Would that be an option?
Yeah, and I think there's a problem in certain areas more than others, if we're honest. And the bit we didn't discuss at the council the other night was, if you've actually looked in the report that went to Cabinet a few weeks ago from the Scrutiny report, I think we're at almost a historically low number of empty long-term empties, which is over 2 years empty and unfurnished over 2 years. So I think it's 157. It was at the end of 2021. If you looked at that report. And compared to a lot of our contemporaries who have 300 or 400 or even 700, I think it was in Lancaster, there are other areas with significantly more, and we were back in the day at a significantly higher level. So I think what we're trying to do is to say, if it's a specific issue on specific properties in a smaller number, that it is probably dealt with best on a localised basis, because it will be specific properties that blight in certain localities, and therefore, and also the nature of, in particular villages, they tend to stand out more, whereas in an urban environment they're probably not quite as noticeable. So yeah, I think that's the right place to go to.
Thank you. I think on the recipe for health, paragraph 22, I think we've got that as amber. But
Yeah.
Given we went to council a couple of days ago, is that just a delay in the reporting, or would you now consider that to be on track? We took a council decision or not?
I think it was right now. I think it's up to date. Polly, yeah, you nodded. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought as much. I mean, thank you for the invite to talk on paragraph 24. I wasn't going to mention special expenses at all, but I mean,
Councillor Mrs. Platt will be very disappointed if you didn't, Chair.
I've got a long page of notes. No. I suppose it's disappointing. It's been delayed. So I think it is quite something that's been asked around many times. I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, if it's going to be reassessed in January 24, are you envisaging bringing some sort of update or a decision or something to council, or just a staging post to have actually say we need to review this, we still need another 12 months, because it has been talked about for some time, and I don't think council are necessarily clear as potentially delayed as this suggests.
So in terms of the work that's already been done, we know the income, obviously, that we get through special expenses, and we did a big exercise to review all of the costs that are involved in generating that income, to know that the match is there. And we also did an exercise where there was a full remeasurement of the area that falls under the special expenses, the grass that is cut. The complication is then building in an element of assumption around, you might have a bigger area, but then there are more economies of scale in cutting a bigger area than there are in smaller areas. So where we got to, the position is one of apportionment. The costs are right that need to be apportioned. It's how they are apportioned across each of the parishes, and that's the place that we've got to now that needs to be reviewed.
Thank you. Is there any thought of having a consultation or engaging our parishes within that? Because there's, from time to time, when the council publishes things like public open space or things like that, I think sometimes the council view of who owns what and manages what is somewhat different when it's been out to parishes and reviewed and come back, where local knowledge has helped correct any assumptions. I just wondered if there's any consideration of before we move forward, whether we would check with that, where we assume the council is responsible for something, but actually the parishes are cutting it, or they took the land on, or anything like that, or are we confident that we know? Because the last thing I'd like to do is have a review, get to a position, then have a long list of, then it not be right. I'd rather take a little bit longer and everybody be comfortable about it.
I think if I may share on that, I think you are right. Of course, is that, always double checking things is important. You don't want to be in a position where you're apportioning a cost which doesn't exist. You say because someone else is doing it, but I think that's pretty much covered in the work that was undertaken. So there can always be a double check. There can always be a double check. There are no objection to that. But I think that's the issue. Partly is, first of all, making sure we're right about saying what we did, as it were, and what we're responsible for. I think where it gets very, very complicated, and Louise just touched on part of it, which is one, you send 2 people down to cut a large area rather than 4 separate smaller areas with travel in between and so on. But the other thing is, because what happens a lot of times when the street scene team goes out, it'll go and do other work as well. So while it's cutting the grass, it's doing X, Y, and Z as well. So then it's apportioning. What part of the salary do you apportion to the grass cutting and special expenses, and what do you apportion to the fact that they're going to clean up some other area, an area that they were working on at the same time doing it, and so they were there another hour. What do you apportion the fuel of the vehicle travelling to that area to the work that they were doing, to the issue that you've raised in your ward, as opposed to just the general grass cutting? So that's when you get down to that level. It is, and I want to be careful our phrases because it will be minuted, but it is nigh on impossible to be absolutely 100% accurate, right? It is therefore, I would argue, relatively quite detailed, but there's always going to be some grey areas. So in terms of double checking our what we apportion costs to and for, I don't know if the leader would agree or disagree, but there's no harm in looking at that in terms of we've got it right. But I don't think it's going to change the more substantial issue, perhaps, which yourself and other members get to, which is, do we get bang for our buck in our area based on what goes on?
It's fine. It wasn't necessarily a recommendation. I was just wondering whether it was something we were considering on that. Because I think if nothing else, it's maybe ensuring people are informed, and residents as well, because there'll be times you see the council operatives cutting the verges they're doing for the county council, stuff they're cutting for the parish, and then the stuff they're doing for Chorley. And I suppose it's getting that clarity so we can hopefully stop talking about this for all our sakes. I look forward. Yeah. Thank you. I think I only had one other question on this point. Point 27, UK shared prosperity. I just wondered how the council was going to scrutinise, or how we were going to look at that, because obviously it's a new area of spend. Is that something that we think will come back as scrutiny's annual report, would go to cabinet, would go to council? I'm not sure what the thoughts were on that.
Yeah, go on. Go on. Some of it will be covered, as Peter says, in the quarterly reports.
That's right.
Which is the obvious place for it to be, which is in the quarter updates. So that will be there. But obviously, there's also outputs we have to report to government as well. So they'll be collected and put forward, and I have no problem with sharing those as well, because I think that's good practice. And if that needs to come to scrutiny, that'd be good. If that has to go elsewhere, it'll be coming through my portfolio meetings as well, because that's very important. But it's quite a disparate. But the main drivers are the delivery for the government targeted numbers, so therefore I would expect that most of our internal targets will be similar to those government numbers, because otherwise they're complicated enough without another layer of measures on top of that, to be quite blunt with you. So and actually for the district leaders meeting next week, I've actually put an agenda item on about UK SPF, and we have a standing item about that, and some of that is to collect how people are doing it elsewhere. So it'd be interesting to know how other districts are doing it in Lancashire to start with, and then wider across the country.
Okay, thank you. Do you think it's worth potentially agreeing that we just have a note for the next scrutiny meeting or something on how the council proposes to do this once you've had those conversations? We can take it from there rather than agree anything.
Holly's nodding, and we'll discuss it with Michelle Horrocks, who tends to lead on this for us, and we'll set something up, yeah.
Thank you.
More worried about getting it going at the moment. Sure.
Thank you. Unless anybody else has any further questions, I think that's Councillor Snape.
I just wondered on the page 17 under democratic scrutiny and electoral services, it says about exploration of joint district council health scrutiny, South Ribble / Chorley. I think Darren sent an email out about this back in April, saying it was basically that there was support for it in South Ribble, but they'd see what the will was in Chorley in the next year, which would in the next electoral year, which would then determine whether or not it happened whether or not it happened full stop. So just what was that up to? Because it says it's green. Does that mean it's happening, or?
The green just means that the project is proceeding in accordance with the project timetable. So I don't know that timetable off the top of my head, I'm really sorry. But I can get back to you as to where it's up to, and perhaps give you an update to members of the committee just as to progress.
I think Margaret France is on that as well. There are an awful lot of health, or there have been an awful lot of health scrutiny arrangements which were in place, which are now changed because of the changes ICS and ICPs and all that. So I think it was more about not rushing into something, was my view when I last discussed it, but Margaret's very much running with that, so we'll get an update from her. All right.
Thank you, everybody. If there's no further questions, thank you for your answers. Please can we note the report? Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 4. Performance focused policy and governance. Again, I invite councillors Bradley and Wilson to present the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, the report outlines there in the opening paragraph is split into 3 areas. First of all, the summary of the budget position. Then we've got the performance, obviously by the key indicators that we set, and then finally the key projects. So if I just briefly give an overview of those 3 areas, Chair. As you can see on page 22, the overall budget was originally set at just in excess of 5.7 million. That was agreed changes that went through of 358 or nearly 359,000. In terms of the forecast now, we are looking at a variance of 22,607, so that's 0.4% above the agreed amended budget for 23-24 of just over £6 million. So the report then just goes on to outline some of the key variations where we've again done better or worse, depending on the original projections. The main underspends are on the staffing side, which is 2 main primary reasons. One is the centralisation and movement of budgets, where other expenditures have come into this directorate. That has helped. Secondly, some vacant posts as well. So they're the 2 sort of staffing issues. The biggest cost pressure, as you can imagine, no huge prizes for guessing, is the increase in utility cost. Of course, we all know about that. That's been reported many times. And then the report goes on to look at areas where we've again received more income perhaps than we originally envisaged, such as leasing the Union Street offices and where we've had overspends or shortfalls in income, such as the events which Councillor Bradley briefly referred to in his report before. So overall, the budget position is I would, like everything, you always want it to be under budget or at least on budget. This is slightly over, but it is only very, very slight. And of course, we'll see what happens for the rest of the rest of the year. In terms of the indicators and the performance, getting into the sort of the detail of how the department is actually working, we can break it down by the indicators. And overall, if we look at each of the areas that the policy and governance covers, which is finance, obviously, and governance, as well as economic growth, as well as transformation and partnerships. Generally, if you look at the targets there, we are performing well. We can see of the indicators there on paragraph 24, the only one being off target is the overall employment rate, which we have discussed at Cabinet before. It does seem to be very at odds with the regional average more so, and therefore, as it says in the report, and we've said before, while we've got perhaps some indications as perhaps why that's the case, we do need to do a lot more work to find out exactly what's going on there. Is that figure correct? If it is, why? If it's not, how do we readjust the way we measure and factor in and report in the future? So that's all got to be done. In terms of the communications and visitor economy, we can see that that's, again, performing well. The only one that perhaps slightly is the top one, the percentage of email open rates within a Tain system is worse than we were this time last year, but ultimately we're still on target, so we're still doing, or we're still above target rather, so we're still doing okay. Supplier payment within 30 days, still below where we want to be, but getting better. If we look at compared to this time last year, we are improving, but that is a double. It's double-edged that in the sense that yes, we need to be doing more to make sure we are on top of paying within that target. That's an absolute duty upon this council to do that. At the same time, it's also a duty to make sure that when we're making payments, we're making sure that is done robustly and that we are not being charged where.
Can I help you out here, Peter?
You
I
can.
I think it's my portfolio.
It's his fault. Yeah.
It's
no,
property.
yeah,
Property have been the problem
Yeah.
because there's been a big churn of staff.
Yeah.
It's the GRNs, it says in the report about goods receipt notes, effectively, as part of the problems that were in property. That wasn't happening as it should. It's getting better, but there are still problematic areas of things being found out. So, as more robust and better processes are being put in, and that comes back to the governance side, and you'll all be aware of why that's being done. That's flushing some of those problems out. So that's why it's getting better, and it can still get better if those policies are properly followed. Is that helpful?
Perfect. Falling sword. Always happy for Alistair to fall on his sword. So again, you just touched on governance there, which is obviously the next one down in the report. We've still got the issue of the internal audit actions agreed. I think obviously that's an important body of work. We all know, as Alice has just alluded to, the whys and wherefores and what's going on. In addition, in that item, we can see that the chief executive needs to sharpen up the speed of his replies, which I'm sure he'll be delighted at, that we're going to highlight that in this report. And I can declare an interest immediately. Of course, he should definitely speed up his speed of his responses to the MP. Although, in fairness, the MP does send some very difficult cases to him, which if he replied within 10 days, I'll be stunned, shocked, and upset at, actually. So maybe we need to amend that target, perhaps. I don't know. But again, generally there, in terms of the other measures, we're doing fine. Likewise on economic growth, in terms of the business support, that's looking very good at the moment. And then in transformation and partnerships, again, it's looking quite strong. So overall, on that, on our indicators, I would say performance is good, but I wouldn't say excellent. I would say good. There are some big challenges still in there. Some of that is internal factors. Some of that is obviously dealing with some of our partners as well. In terms of the corporate strategy projects, which there are there on pages 28 and 29 and 30, we can see that again at the moment we are looking at a good picture because we're looking at everyone being green, with the exception of the work to improve our council buildings, which, as we know, again, because we discussed it at Cabinet a week or so ago, we have now got the accommodation working group set up, so that should actually hopefully drive along this project and get us back into a position where we can either get back to a green status during the year, and more importantly, bring forward actual plans to do the work, which is the key measure of anything, is the actual doing. So I look forward to that being done. But on the other key projects, obviously the R80 is green, which is positive news. And I will let the leader jump in. I can see he's getting agitated next to me, so I'll let him in.
So that Amber one, I think some of the frustration there and some of the delay there is around decarbonisation, and to be quite make a political point for a minute, the frankly ludicrous manner in which the government are trying to get bids for councils and other public bodies to decarbonise their buildings, which we are trying to align, as you would, with the accommodation strategy. Because if you're going to change a building round, you take the opportunity to decarbonise it. And the most obvious building was this building here. The schemes that the government are coming up with are short term. They are very strict. They're administered generally by an organisation, Salix, whose name's increasingly mentioned by lots of councils as being very difficult to deal with, because they seem to want a perfect world. And many town halls, as people will be aware, are old buildings, are buildings with lots of irregularities and change and adaptations over years, and retrofitting and changing stuff in it to decarbonise and to keep people working and all the rest of it is very complicated. There is not a lot of bend or slippage in the way that they do things. Now, if we had a brand new town hall or a civic building a bit like South Ribble might have, it'd be an awful lot easier than in this older building to do it. We don't want to not do it properly, and at times we are that frustrated we're almost giving the money back because we cannot hit the targets that they're doing, because actually, bizarrely, it's going to cost us more to work within the strictures the government are putting on, which then defies the point of getting grants, etc. We've been highly frustrated by that. I think the Wheeze, amongst others, has been very concerned by some of the requirements they're putting on us in terms of outputs and outcomes, and there is no point of signing up to something we're not going to do and then have the risk that that money's then not delivered to us. So, as a plea, and I've raised this through DCN Network and others, and again, not a lone voice, a lot of councils are giving money back because they're just unable to fit these things, and they need to be a more realistic targets and more realistic approach to doing this kind of work if we're serious about decarbonising alongside modernising and providing a modern workspace for our employees, which we are, but we can't do both with the money we've got at the minute. And also, as everybody's aware, there's been a change in the way that people work, so it's you have to create different spaces than perhaps we thought about 3 or 4 years ago. So frustrated, but we'll get there in the end, Chair, I'm sure.
Thank you. We'll move to questions, Councillor Lees. No? Colleagues? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So I'm interested in the in paragraph 19, the governance indicators. In particular, the percentage of agreed internal audit actions implemented by management. It's quite a low percentage. That what I can't get a flavour of from this is, are they historic actions? Are they current? And what level of risk does that pose?
They are, I believe, more of the current, but I'll pass over to Chris, because Chris did try to briefly explain to me what was going on, and I got it lost in translation, so I'll let him explain to you more clearly, Councillor Brown.
I'm really not sure that's down to me or
It's
Councillor
definitely
Wilson. There is a mix of historic and more up-to-date management action. So for each internal audit review that's undertaken, I think only the ones which are already substantial, which I think I'm aware of 2 in the last 10 years, audit like to find things to improve. There will be management actions agreed, and they are the processes that they are agreed with the owner of that process, and they're undertaken. And the reason I'm just giving that kind of context is not all of these are key risk actions, so they should be prioritised accordingly. What has happened is some of the older risks have been overtaken by older actions have been overtaken by processes being improved as a matter of course. And we're going through a process at the moment of making sure that some of the older ones are marked as resolved when they are resolved. There is also recognition that it needs to be recognised that some of these management actions, while still on the system, have been managed in a different way. But we've not wanted to mark them as complete because that feels like cheating. So an example of that is we had an online waiver process which, due to changes to the IT back office systems, couldn't work anymore with the new systems we had. So the management action was to have a new digital waiver process. That takes time to be developed. In the short term, to manage that, we developed kind of an email-driven procedure which did exactly the same. So there was a form to complete, it got the same information, went through the same approvals process, it just wasn't automated. That managed the risk, but it didn't tick off the action. So it is important to recognise that some of these will have been kind of dealt with, but we don't want members to lose that assurance that when audit actions are recommended for implementation, that we kind of go behind them. The reason that there's a bit of overlap, and I think this is where I needed to explain it better. This is a responsibility of the governance committee. So the governance committee will monitor it and are monitoring it. It's been included here as a performance indicator for the council, really, although it sits within my directorate, because we take this seriously. For the first time in a considerable period of time, there was a question raised by external audit in relation to the statement of accounts. So we looked at the whole governance environment and how we can demonstrate how seriously we take the governance framework. So this was part of that process. It was reporting it as a performance indicator, and hence, Councillor Wilson, was, it takes this very seriously as well, and was asking how we were addressing this. So sitting behind this is another series of actions that have been undertaken to try and progress the implementation rates, improve the implementation rates. So we have regular reporting to the senior management team. We've got an established corporate governance group, which are the statutory officers, the director of customer and digital, and the head of internal audit, and we receive reports from individual services on implementation rates, and we hold heads of service to account when that's falling behind. It is an indicator that fluctuates almost on a monthly basis, well, obviously on a monthly basis, but what you will find with there may be a raft of management actions suddenly become due, because people always do it to the end of a month or the end of a quarter. So whilst they should be being ticked off on the system and implemented, unless it is ticked off, we don't view it as complete, even if the work has been done. So that's why it's a bit lower than we would like. It says worse, but it's actually going in the right direction overall. There is a lot more attention being given to the implementation of these, and we are getting better at it. I'm hoping in 12 months' time, the governance committee, and if it's reported here again, that will be demonstrated by an improvement in that.
Thank you for that. Makes absolute sense. Thank you. So would it be better to change or to reflect this with audit actions that are actually due, rather than all is this all audit actions, or just?
No, this is against audit actions that were due. Yeah, so yeah, it's not good enough, and I'm not going to try and say it is, and we don't want to move away from the 90% target either, because that is where we at least should be. Ideally, in my role, I want to see 100% implementation, but in practice that isn't going to happen for external reasons. Something else always changes the priority of an implementation of an action, and like I say, not all of them are key risks to the council or even significant risk to the council. Some of them are just service improvements.
Just a final one, and I accept that it's being looked at by the governance committee as well, but we don't think there's any risk to the head of internal audit opinion, or there's no risk around that for the final accounts or anything? No.
Not in relation to the completion of management actions. The head of internal audit opinion will look at the whole um, governance environment, based on the audit reviews that have been undertaken. It is a factor, you know, commitment to the governance environment is a factor that will be taken into account. That generally plays in favour of a more positive view, because there is generally a commitment to improvement.
Just to back up, I mean, there's a lot of governance and audit speak there going on in the nicest possible way. Well, no, because it needed it, and that's the bit that me and Peter struggle to understand. So we've asked the same question: why is this not going up fast enough? And two things. One is it's really down to the governance committee to sign this off and say things are getting better, because that's their job, and we are law to interfere with that. But what we have to do is to make sure that the management and us and the council are taking it all seriously. So that's why it's a measure. So the fact it's a measure means we're taking it seriously, and the work that Chris alluded to that was going on, and the fact that it's poor means it's even more of a priority. And our view is, though, we're not going to step in and take things away from governance. What we're going to try and do is facilitate that working through governance, but until governance are happy with it. And that's why I think we're looking to flush these things through, because governance, given some of the experiences we've had recently, which haven't been catastrophic, but they were concerning, is it's got to stay with governance. But we are constantly asking the question now of when, how, why, what, which perhaps in the past we were just letting the whole thing, and that's come back to my discussion right at the very start of the meeting. We're not here to do the job, we're just here to say it's a priority for the council, and it remains a very big priority for the council, and the sooner it gets done, the better. So let's see where that comes to. But I understand the points Chris has made. Final. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Lees?
Right, thank you, Chair. Regarding 16, the number of entrants to Astley Hall, since the hall's been done up and we've gone to a payment entrance situation where people can either get a year's pass or a daily pass, do we have any indications of whether these people were visiting it or season passes and visiting it more, or are we getting a lot of people from outside the borough?
Yeah, I've not got the breakdown. I mean, we do know, but I've not got the breakdown, but I can make sure we get it, Roy. Because it is interesting, like you say, first of all, what's the difference between people who are local residents buying the year's, subscription pass? Secondly, how many people from outside? Thirdly, how many repeat visitors from outside, perhaps even, but on both, that's another one. So it is recorded, so I can get you, I can ask for the details to be given to us in terms of what we've got. What I'd say on Astley Hall is generally, I although we're obviously hitting the target, I think we've got massive potential to do so much more. So much more in terms of attracting people there, so much more in terms of creating income when we get people there, and so much more in terms of bringing more events there and weddings, etc. We do weddings, but that's something we've got to push at. So two things on that. One is driving a more proactive, not that people aren't doing anything, but even more proactive in terms of actually promoting Astley Hall as a destination. But secondly, it links into what we put in the corporate strategy on Tuesday night's council meeting, which was about the destination management plan and having that sort of bigger, wider picture across the borough and why it comes to Chorley in the first place. This is everything, and linking all the areas of interest, tourist attractions, what's going on in the borough, what's going on in the town, all that being linked together to actually give us a bigger footprint across, well, I would argue across the country, in terms of, the brown sides on the motorway are fantastic. It's just, of course, the hall was then shut for a period of time with COVID and refurbishments and so on. So it's how do you now get back into sort of where we probably envisaged would be 4 years ago, but we've got to get back there. Some fantastic work gone on, a lot of investment, taxpayers' money being put in. We've now got to get the rewards.
I think my question was basically based on, are these people footfalling, are they paying every time they go in, or is it?
No, I understand the point. That's right. You could have 5,000 visitors who just paid once effectively because the local residents who just keep going back, as opposed to exactly. And that's what I say. Let's ask for the details, and then we can do a bit more analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Sneyd?
Just under the corporate strategy projects, page 29, the Rural England Prosperity Fund grants. I don't know if it's a bit outdated, but it says about the closure of the initial expressions of interest being the 6th of October, and that'll be plugged for the next quarter. But obviously that's been and gone. I just wondered, is there any indication as to the number of businesses that have expressed an expression of interest? I know it's talks that there's a few processes to go through and all that, but just wondered if there'd been a good take up or an average take up, or above or below what was thought. Thanks.
That's right. I may be getting confused. There was two grants launched around the same sort of time. One was the Rural Prosperity one, and one was the Green grants, I think. Probably nodding at me so. And I had an update, and I think from memory, the rural one was oversubscribed. So there was a lot of good interest from it. It was very popular, and to be fair, we'd done quite a lot of interface beforehand to identify some of the businesses, and they were linked into it. But some of the idea perhaps was to maybe some of those that did apply for the rural grant could actually apply for both, and therefore we wanted to even the pots out slightly. So I think it was extended to work alongside so that people could actually apply for both, so they might get it from one or the other. That was the last I heard, I think. But yeah, we were fairly well heartened by the fact that, but we'd done a lot of work to trail it with people who'd said previously, we want this, we want that, we want the other, which is one of the reasons why we switched. If you remember, that Rural Prosperity Grant came out of, previously we talked about broadband work, which wouldn't have given us as much bang for our buck, literally, in terms of what we would have got for the money putting in. And the businesses appeared to want the grant stuff, so therefore there was a ready market there. So I'm reassured. But again, Michelle Harris can get a full report, and it'll be coming back shortly with what the take-up is. And it would have been coming to my portfolio meeting next Monday, but I think that's now been delayed for various reasons. But I'll update you, councillors, in due course. All right.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Singh?
On the table, the number of businesses attending council business / networking engagement events. Are we able to get a split of businesses in Chorley and then businesses out of Chorley coming into Chorley to make connections?
So as part of the economic strategy refresh that we did last year, and the fact that the economic development team through COVID had sort of two things happened. One is they transferred on to just getting grants out, that came from the government to keep businesses going through COVID. Post-COVID, we had a relaunch of the team. Some of the team had left. We'd had a churn of staff, and a lot allied to some of the UK SPS stuff and all the rest of it. We relaunched what our strategy was. As part of doing that, we've taken a slightly different approach to business events. And some are very much targeted business events to target people in the borough, to give them information, to help them to understand their needs and what have you. And other events specifically target to get people from outside the borough into the borough and be aware of what Chorley is. And therefore, some of the events we're planning in due course may take place, and we've done this before, in Manchester or outside, to go and sell Chorley externally. So there's a bit of a digression. We do measure who attends and where they come from and what have you. We tend to find they come from not that far away. So, for argument's sake, businesses in Horwich quite like coming to Chorley events because they tend to affiliate with Chorley and see the benefits of doing business with Chorley, rather than going towards Manchester because they're on the extremity of Manchester. Even though really that's where they would be pointed towards in a normal business, because it's those cut across that come really. But yeah, it's something we're changing, and we are trying different things to see what works. I think is the best way of putting it at the moment. So yeah, it's working fairly well, but I think there's still, again, back to Peter's point earlier, there's more we can do, and it's about doing something different and doing something that they want to come to. But sometimes you're giving them information to help them, which is like workshops and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes you're selling Chorley, and it's horses for courses really.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Got a few, if I may. Again, I would, so if I just go back to the table between paragraph 14 and 15, I agree, I'd welcome further information on the overall employment rate, because I would have imagined Chorley was to be above the regional average, where I would have expected it to be. And when do you align that with some of the other figures, like the number of claimants where performance is better than target? It doesn't look like everything is correct in that table. So I think I'd welcome further information on that at some point, or when we have clarity.
It was discussed at cabinet actually. I don't think you were at the cabinet meeting, Councillor Wiggett, but the cabinet we discussed it, the fact that there are contrary indicators. So again, we discussed needs, and our needs numbers are lower than the average. So it appears to either be a wrong number, which is what we're trying to check down now with the people who collate these stats, because these are national stats that they collated, or there's something very strange happening in Chorley, and there's all kinds of wonderful ideas put forward, but we need to do like another level below the core stats to look at the demographic. Is it a symptom of some people? I think the phrase was put, being comfortable on their whatever money they've got coming in of a certain age who haven't returned to work after COVID, or is it Councillor France raised the question: is it long-term people waiting for operations? Is that having an impact? Because we have quite an old demographic now in certain areas, and it's people who can't work because of medical conditions, and there's longer and longer waiting lists. So there was lots of ideas put forward, but we need to go back to the statisticians who put that together to get that breakdown, and then try and do that analysis on top of that, which I think the Chief Exec and Polly have been tasked to do. Okay. I think someone's in front of you and understand again to explain the shortfall in his correspondence.
I think he would love to come and explain what he thinks is a shortfall in Chorley Council's responses. But joking apart, on a serious note, Councillor, you are right on the issue that many people who come to the MP after they've been to the authority, after they've been to another organisation or a housing association, and then they come with the view of, here's my case and how can you help? But I think in defence of the missing the target, as it were, that's also why sometimes it's a bit more complicated, because what a request from the MP may be is to instigate a review of the whole case. Well, again, that's not going to be. You can get an acknowledgement in 10 days, but you're never going to get a reply in 10 days, and nor should you if you're doing that work properly. So I do think there perhaps is a nuanced way of looking at that measure. I think the principle's right to say, are we on top of things and are we dealing with, the correspondence? How do we nuance that to deal with the complexities that sometimes are involved? Probably above my pay grade, but there you go.
Thank you. I appreciate the honesty in the response on those. I don't think I had anything further. No, looking at my notes, I think that was everything from me, unless anybody has anything else? Okay, well, the recommendation is that the report is noted. Can we all agree to note the report? Thank you. Item 5, any urgent business previously agreed with the chair. I have no urgent items and now declare the meeting closed and would like to thank everybody for the attendance, especially